Do you know of someone who ruined their life in just a matter of minutes? If so, how did they do it? Story 1. When I was a teenager, my dad and this dude had beef. My dad was dating this guy's ex-wife, and he didn't like that. They bumped into each other at a bar and exchanged some words. My dad left the bar, and the dude was waiting for him outside. A car rolled up, and somebody handed the dude a handgun. He pointed at his head from about 2 feet away and pulled the trigger. Luckily for my father, the gun jammed. My pops wasn't taking any chances, so he took off running. The dude cleared the gun and emptied the clip, missing all but one shot that hit my dad in the back. My dad was already downtown, and the hospital was only a couple blocks away, or so he thought. Unluckily for my dad, the hospital was under renovation and preparing for relocation. When he saw that it was under construction, he slumped over and called 911 for an ambulance. The surgeons removed his kidney because it was too damaged to repair, and he survived. The dude got an attempted murder charge and almost 15 years in prison. Story 2. In a mildly similar thing, also a horrified witness. College frat party. Very chill vibe, not a rager. A mildly drunk kid, mid-conversation, decides to hop up and sit on the railing of a deck we were out on. He hopped up and did one of those panicked flails you do when your chair is about to tip backward on you, falling backward off the deck. He lands on his head, medevaced to the nearest trauma center. Did not make it through the night. I didn't know him, just seen him around campus. What was sad to see was most people assumed he was being a drunk idiot at a raging frat party and wound up doing some dumb stunt. He just made a minor drunken mistake, miscalculation, and paid for it with his life. Story 3. Brutal man. I had a friend who was in a bad place beginning of college. Lost a parent the year before. We all went out drinking one night. He usually hits it hard. He crashed into our room on the floor. They used to make fun of me because I'm a notoriously light sleeper. Middle of the night, I hear this really weird noise that I can't place. I'm lying in the dark for a minute, trying to figure out what it is. I rolled over and flashed my phone light and saw my friend flat on his back, actively aspirating on his vomit. We turned him over and it was okay, but he woke up the next morning and asked why his pillow was in the sink covered with vomit. Had no idea what happened. He was pretty shaken up by it. I think it helped him clean up his act a little. Story 4. Former roommate and friend, building a decent career, coaching a local youth sporting team, going to grad school, and just buying a house. Turns out he had CP. He got lots of it on the deep web. Custom photoshopped, with faces of kids from his youth team. Accidentally uploaded it to Adobe Cloud, and they sent the feds after him. The trial is ongoing, but he's likely going away for a long time. Story 5. My father punched a window out of anger, severed the artery and ligament in his bicep, almost bled out, effectively removed his ability to work with his hands, which was the one thing he had going for him. He then became a moody post-alcoholic. Actually, he always was one, but way worse after this. He then beat the neighbor across the road with a pipe after they got drunk and got into an argument. He was arrested and went to jail. My parents lost the family home. They ended up splitting. I had no contact with him. 2 years later, he took his life. Story 6. My ex sent child pornography to himself via email, and the company immediately reported it to the police. He was arrested a couple of weeks later and is now serving a 7-year prison sentence with lifetime registration. Edit. Y'all, this thread has shown me that I'm still traumatized AF. What a shit thing to happen to someone. Of course it happened to me. I am so sorry to all the wonderful partners who have been lied to and cheated on. We try our best. We build a good life for the two of you, and they take it all away. I hope you are all doing well now, and if it's fresh, believe me, it is going to get better. Love yourself. Evil preys on good. You are amazing and deserving of Love Story 7. This one I say with a heavy heart. My best friend was testing his bike about 200 meters from his house after service and fixing a few parts. Wasn't speeding at all, but had to swerve to avoid a mother and baby in the pram as they crossed onto the footpath bridge he was on. Essentially, it's a blind corner leading onto the bridge, so cannot see who's coming until they step foot. He slid off the bike to avoid the pair of them and hit his head on a pole. Wasn't wearing a helmet or speeding, was simply testing the bike at probably 50 kilometers per hour. His skull fractured, basically brain ruptured, and I was stuck with him groaning in pain, eyes flickering uncontrollably with my shirt pushing into his brain, which felt somewhat like mashed. They couldn't help, so had to call in a helicopter. Was in a coma with severe head trauma for 2 weeks and died from pneumonia. The last words I ever said to him when he was completely conscious was, "Wear your helmet." He said, "I'll be back in a minute or two. Rip." Edit. I understand 50 kilometers can be speeding, I should say. He wasn't hooning or riding extremely irrationally as some people do on dirt bikes. He wouldn't have even left second gear. I was standing directly down the road and heard him brake as he approached the bridge. Didn't even see the woman until he was off the bike.
Hey, since you're so far into the video, why not consider subscribing? We post content like this regularly. Also, consider giving a like since it helps people who like these find the videos. Now let's get back into the story.
Story 8. Yeah, I do actually. The dude had set some arbitrary life goals for himself to hit. Stupid shit like being married, having a career, owning a car. That kind of dumb shit. He wanted it all by 30. He currently has all those things, but at the cost of literally all of his lifelong friends. People who had known him since he was a toddler. He had a degree in chemical engineering, but couldn't find a job within his set time frame in the field, so he settled for a career at a school in a position his mom got for him. He had 2 fiancées leave him, and finally just asked a girl he didn't even really want to marry him because he was almost 30. Finally, he decides and plans his wedding. Oops, one big issue. He hasn't invited any of his friends because he has decided we can't help him anymore. He needs to further his career, so he asks his supervisor and boss to be his wedding party. He didn't even like them. Eventually, we find out about this. Someone confronts him, and he says he's done with us because we have nothing left to give him to further his goals. Ridiculous. We found out later on that he resented all of us because we were happy despite not being married or owning homes, and he was fucking miserable. So now he has a wife he hates, a job he hates, no friends, and a used car he hates, and he lives in an apartment underneath his parents. Eta. The life-ruining in minutes was when he admitted to all of us that he didn't invite us on purpose to his wedding, and that he hated all of us. In that moment, all of us ditched him pretty much on the spot, and he has been miserable since, as far as I know. Story 9. There was a guy I knew called Pete. Pete liked to drink, and soon he got the nickname Party Pete. The trouble was, I think he decided that he had to live up to that nickname. He worked at a takeaway in town, but lived a long walk up a hill out of town. One morning, his boss's wife came past the takeaway and saw that the door was open. She went to see what was going on and found Party Pete passed out half in and half out of the open door. She woke him up and asked him what the hell he was doing, at which point he called her a fucking bitch. So that was Party Pete, out of a job. He didn't worry, though. He'd been selling drugs from the takeaway, and now he decided that would be his full-time job. Now he didn't have to worry about getting up for work, and he got more and more into the Party Pete persona. At Christmas, I was around at a friend's house for dinner. It was all very nice, a little bit drunk, a lot of good food. Suddenly, Party Pete showed up, uninvited. He caused chaos, spilling red wine on one guest's nice white dress. The host had a photo of her father in the kitchen. He had died several years earlier, and she liked to have him there watching over the festivities. He knocked that over and spilled a drink on it. He was firmly told that it was time for him to leave. Now comes the part where he fucked things up for himself. He decided to drive home. On the way, he crashed into a woman's car that was parked in her driveway. She came out and said she was going to call the police. He offered her 2,000 euros. She said, "What use is that to me? You've destroyed my car." She called the police. They wanted to see some ID. He said his ID was at home. They drove him to his house. They told him to go in and get his passport. He went in. Several minutes passed, and the police decided that they had to go and see what the hell was going on. He had fallen asleep, and the police saw the fruit bowl full of drugs on his kitchen table. So he ended up getting locked up. But the police gave him a way out. Tell them who all the other dealers in town were, especially who was supplying them. He gave them the names of every dealer in town, including his housemate, which made things very awkward for them when they were both released. He also gave the name of the main supplier who lived down the valley, a chap with the delightful name Killer. When he was released, people suddenly turned up in town, going to the bars he used to go to, asking if anyone had seen him. He didn't dare leave the house because of Killer's friends. He couldn't stay at home because of his housemate. In the end, his parents had to come and get him, pack up his life, and take him home with them. He's never been heard of again.